just MailChimped my marketing.
You MailChimped your what?
I MailChimped my marketing with AI to create an effective marketing campaign in minutes.
No, MailChimp and Way.
Yes, MailChimp in Way. Now I can hyper-personalize my campaigns across email and SMS.
You can do all that with MailChimp?
What did I just MailChimp and say?
MailChimp your marketing with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-ons. Visit MailChimp.com.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop Black Friday week starting November 21st.
EVO. This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. In addition to the content that I write and produce here for The Devil Within, a parallel interest of mine is history, world history, American history, and specifically massive events that have altered the course of the relentless march of time. The Civil War era of American history I've found particularly interesting at various times in my life, and I have a new podcast series slated for 2025 that lives in and explores that specific time. And then from time to time, we come across episodes like today's, where those two fields of interests overlap. The Stone House at Manassas is a story rooted in the bloody battles of the American Civil War, and it persists to this day with multiple credible accounts of supernatural occurrences. Because when you stand before the Stone House at Manassas, the air carries an almost palpable weight. If you haven't been, you should go. It's as if the years themselves are pressing down on your shoulders. This house, its rough-hewn stone walls weathered by more than 200 years, has borne witness to lives taken, families torn apart, and the silent, shadowy residue of war. It's a structure that remains both stubbornly rooted in the past and strangely alien in the present. A relic among the rolling hills of Virginia. Welcome back to The Devil Within. You're listening to The Stone House at Manassas. The house sits near the crossroads of what were once bloody battlefields, known in history as the battlefields of Bull Run. And if you listen closely, as the last rays of sun sink into the earth, some swear they can hear the echoes of those who were here before, still marching, calling, bleeding, and fading away. Long before soldiers clashed at Manassas, this land was sacred to the people who first roamed its fields and forests. The indigenous tribes who lived here, cultivating their stories, their lives, they knew the land intimately. They called it the Fields of Spirits, perhaps sensing that the soil held an energy stronger than the sum of its trees, grass, and stone. European settlers who arrived in the 18th century noted that this land felt different. Some called it haunted, while others called it blessed. Over time, the Stone House was built. It was just a simple inn. Its thick walls meant to provide refuge for weary travelers crossing between the urban centers to the north and the Virginian countryside. For the first few decades, it was just that, a simple place of respite, filled with laughter, warmth, and stories spun by the firelight. But destiny had other plans. In the summer of 1861, the American Civil War reached Manassas in full force. Two armies converged upon the quiet fields around the Stone House, each convinced they were in store for a quick victory. The Battle of First Manassas, or the First Bull Run, was one of the war's first major conflicts, and with it, the Stone House transformed from a way station for travelers into a field hospital. When wounded Union and Confederate soldiers began pouring into the house, its walls bore witness to indescribable suffering. The structure became an island of agony, sheltering young men far from home, dying on the wooden floors, tended to by surgeons working under brutal conditions. Every creak of the boards, every whimper of a dying man, every silent scream left an impression, until the house itself seemed to absorb the grief, holding on to each moment as if afraid to let them go. Over time, the soldiers left and the war moved on. But for those who passed through its doors, many would remain forever entangled with the house. When the soldiers were gone, the land returned to a fragile quiet, but rumors began to spread. People spoke of strange sounds and apparitions around the stone house, sights that caused even the bravest to hesitate before entering alone at night. Travelers reported seeing ghostly figures in Union and Confederate uniforms, limping up the road or standing guard, forever bound to a duty that they could never abandon. Local residents began to swear they could hear the moans of wounded soldiers and the clanking of phantom weapons. One night, a farmer, passing the house on horseback, described the eerie image of a young soldier looking lost, his eyes vacant as if he were staring across some unseen battlefield, forever frozen in that final moment of terror. Years later, historians and curious locals alike would gather around the stone house, hoping to catch a glimpse of these apparitions. They would enter its cold, echoing rooms, some skeptical, but others certain of the presence of souls yet to pass on. Those who dared to venture in after dusk often found themselves shivering, sensing a presence just beyond their vision, as though the house itself was watching them. In the years after the war, the town of Manassas grew and changed. Preservationists found relics from those days scattered around the stone house. Battered buttons, fragments of bullets, letters scratched in haste by hands that were about to cross over. Each item told a story, a small window into lives that ended too soon. One such relic was a torn page from a soldier's journal, found hidden between two floorboards. It spoke of a young man's last thoughts of home, of family, and of fear. "If I fall here," he had written, "may I find peace." But standing in the stone house, one couldn't help but wonder if peace had ever come to those who had died within its walls. Nearby the house stands a twisted oak, its branches gnarled and bent with age. Some say that during the battle, soldiers tied their horses to it, while others suggest it was used as a gathering point for field medics. Today it stands as a silent sentinel, bearing witness to both history and its hauntings. People say that on cold autumn nights like tonight, you can hear a rustling, as if voices are trapped within its bark, desperate to share their story before they fade forever. One local man who lived near the stone house all his life claimed that on certain nights he could see the tree illuminated, as though lit by an unseen fire. He described the glow as a, quote, light of memory, illuminating figures around the tree, forever tied to this place and its history. He spoke of soldiers' voices carried by the wind, drifting through the branches like spectral hymns. The war affected not only the soldiers, but the families who lost loved ones, many of whom returned to the site, drawn to the last known place their husbands, sons, or fathers had been seen alive. Over the decades, stories emerged of a woman dressed in mourning black, standing in front of the stone house, her face veiled, her posture one of profound sorrow. Some say she's the spirit of a mother searching for her son, while others believe she represents all the grieving families who sought closure at Manassas. Local lore also tells of a young girl, perhaps no older than 10, often seen near the stone house. Dressed in simple 19th century attire, she appears as a flickering shadow, skipping near the stone wall as though in play, her laughter barely audible over the hum of modern-day traffic. Those who have seen her say she disappears in an instant, leaving behind only an echo of innocence lost amid the horrors of war. Over the years, historians, ghost hunters, and curious tourists have all come to the stone house. Some hope for a brush with the supernatural, while others come seeking understanding, a way to connect and reconcile with the past. For many, the house embodies the war's most painful legacy, the souls caught between the living and the dead, haunted not by unfinished business, but by the memories of lives interrupted. In the house's stillness, you could almost feel a reverence, as if the structure carries the weight of what it witnessed, honoring those who passed through its doors. It's become more than a building. It's a living monument, a place where past and present converge, where history is not merely remembered, but experienced. After the Civil War ended, the stone house returned to relative quiet, but it had been forever transformed. In the late 1800s, attempts were made to repurpose the building, to restore it to its former role as a country inn. Yet those who stayed there reported those restless nights filled with uneasy dreams and the sensation of being watched. One former Union soldier, revisiting the area years after the war, stopped at the house to rest. He would later describe his night there as one of reckoning, saying he could feel the weight of his fallen comrades pressing on him as though they were all huddled close, trying to speak to him. And he wasn't the last person to feel that way. Each guest seems to leave with a story, a brush with something unexplainable, a hand on the shoulder in the dark, voices echoing through the walls, shadows that disappeared before they could be fully understood. These weren't simply ghost stories, but memories imprinted on the structure, as though the stone house had become a living record of the Civil War's human toll. Despite its reputation, the house became something of a local sanctuary. Those who had survived the war, veterans and widows, the displaced and the grieving, they all found a strange solace in its walls. Families of the fallen would gather there on anniversaries, sometimes placing flowers near the house or lighting a candle in the windows at dusk. Even in its stillness, the house became a place where the living and the dead might find comfort in each other's presence, however intangible it may feel. As time wore on, the world changed around the stone house. Manassas itself grew, roads were paved, the rumble of horse-drawn carts were replaced by the hum of automobiles. Yet the house remained, stubborn and steady, a remnant of an era that's now beyond memory. In the early 20th century, as historians and preservationists began to recognize the significance of Civil War sites, the stone house was earmarked for preservation, its walls carefully maintained, each scar and mark from the past preserved like lines in an ancient text. In the 1960s, the National Park Service took ownership, determined to preserve the house and share its story with future generations. They restored it to its Civil War appearance and then opened its doors as a historic site. Tour guides would lead visitors through the rooms, recounting the battles and the stories of soldiers who passed through. Some visitors came with a particular interest in the paranormal, and guides would occasionally mention the house's ghostly reputation with a respectful nod.
I just MailChimped my marketing.
You MailChimped your what?
I MailChimped my marketing with AI to create an effective marketing campaign in minutes.
No, MailChimpin' way.
Yes, MailChimp way. Now I can hyper-personalize my campaigns across email and SMS.
You can do all that with MailChimp?
What did I just MailChimp and say?
MailChimp your marketing with the #1 AI-powered email marketing and automation platform, Intuit MailChimp. #1 based on publicly available data on competitors' customers. Plans vary. SMS available as add-ons. Visit MailChimp.com.
It was around this time that accounts of strange happenings began to resurface in earnest. park rangers reported hearing footsteps in empty rooms. They found objects slightly moved from their previous places, when remember, the building had basically become a museum. Objects are expected to stay put. Or they would see faint impressions in the dust as though someone had walked there moments before. Guests on guided tours would sometimes stop abruptly, feeling a chill pass over them or notice a faint whisper in their ear. Children, often more sensitive to such things, would glance curiously at empty doorways, sometimes smiling and waving as if someone unseen had just entered the room. But despite the eerie reports, there was never any fear in the air, only a sense of reverence. Visitors often left feeling as if they had just been in contact, or at least come awfully close, to something sacred. A layer of history that went beyond words and photographs. Some described their encounters as though they were witnessing the past, only alive in the present, sensing the house's role as a keeper of memories that were just too strong to fade away. Among the countless stories of spectral encounters, one stands out, one story that has become something of a local legend. It's said that on particularly quiet nights, again, especially in the autumn, when the air grows cool and crisp, two figures can be seen standing near the edge of the house. A young soldier dressed in the Union blue, and a woman in black, veiled, her posture one of quiet sorrow. According to legend, the soldier was among the many to die in the stone house, succumbing to his wounds after the Battle of Second Manassas. His identity was never known, his grave left unmarked. The woman, locals say, was his girlfriend, who traveled from her small town in Pennsylvania to look for him after the battle ended. But she arrived too late, discovering only that he'd been brought to the stone house and had died there, alone and far from home. Heartbroken, she is said to have returned to the site every year until her own death, lighting a candle in his memory, whispering her goodbyes to the cool Virginia breeze. Over time, the story grew, taking on an aura of myth. Visitors to the stone house claim that on certain autumn nights, if the moon is full and the wind is still, you can see them standing together, two shadowy figures at peace at last, bound by love and loss, neither willing to leave the other. Some have even claimed to hear faint voices, a woman's soft words drifting through the night air, a lover's farewell that echoes across the years. The stone house has become more than a site of ghostly encounters. In recent years, it's taken on the role of memory keeper, a place where people come to connect with not only the history of the Civil War, but with the intangible sense of those who lived and died on these fields. Families of Civil War reenactors often visit, as do descendants of soldiers who fought at Manassas, and many bring mementos, leaving flowers or small tokens as offerings to the spirits that remain. In a way, the stone house serves as a bridge between past and present. Here, the ghosts of Manassas are not something to fear, but to honor. The house stands as a reminder of the enduring human need to remember, to hold on to the threads of those who came before us, and to keep their stories alive, even as they slip further into history. For some, the house is a place to contemplate the sacrifices made, and to feel the weight of lives lived in turbulent times. For others, it's a site of personal pilgrimage, a place to remember ancestors, or pay respect to the soldiers whose lives were cut short on this land. Each visitor leaves a part of themselves behind, adding to the layers of memory and meaning that have accumulated over the decades. Today, the stone house at Manassas stands as a testament not only to the past, but to the power of memory. The apparitions, the faint echoes of laughter, the ghostly figures glimpsed through fogged windows, all serve to remind us that history is never entirely gone. The spirits that linger here are part of an ongoing story, one that we add to each time we visit, each time we remember. As you leave the stone house, with the last rays of sunlight fading from its walls, you can feel that strange, heavy stillness once again, a feeling that you're walking away not only from a building, but from something alive, something that watches and remembers. The air grows silent, the world fades into twilight, and the house stands as it always has, bearing witness to those who cannot leave, to lives cut short and stories half told, to the ghosts who forever keep watch on the fields of Manassas. And so the stone house remains, not merely a relic of stone and mortar, but a monument to memory and a sanctuary for spirits. Its walls still resonate with the voices of the past, its shadows alive with the souls of those who linger, forever bound to the place where history and memory meet. Happy Veterans Day. Hope you enjoyed the holiday. And if you enjoy your freedom even more, thank a veteran. Thanks for listening. If you think you know someone who might enjoy this episode, I would appreciate you sharing it with them. And if you feel so inspired, head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show. It helps more than you know. And please make sure you're following The Devil Within wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. You could also check out our socials at The Devil Within Pod on Instagram and Facebook, and now full episodes available if YouTube is more your thing. Again, happy Veterans Day, and until next time, stay safe out there. The Devil Within is an EVO production, recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. Written and produced by Brandon Morgan, executive produced by Danny Abelson. For The Devil Within, I'm your host, Brandon Morgan.